Hello, my topic is the obesity epidemic. I study in Catholic University Nursing School St. Vincent of Paul. My personal data: my name is Nadia Barriga Mendez and teacher Master John Moscoso. Definition: the definition of an obesity epidemic is the growing number of people globally, more than 1 billion adults and 22 million children under the age of 5 who are overweight or obese and often have accompanying medical ailments such as chronic disease and disability.
For years now, when it comes to obesity, Americans are at the top of the food chain. That's right, they are the largest industry in food eating in the world. You ever stop and think to yourself, how much does this epidemic actually cost us? Let's take a look at some of the numbers. The major things that bring the bill way up are transportation, food, clothing, and medical bills. Transportation. The airlines estimated between 1990 and the year 2000 it cost the US an additional $350 million of fuel to handle the weight increase. In 2006, it was estimated that Americans consumed an extra 938 million gallons of gas a year due to passenger weight increase. So now we're getting the idea. Increased food costs, people eating more than the required amount, plus size clothing because regular clothes just won't fit. Then all the diet products to lose all this weight is costing the US $140 billion a year. Then we have the medical bills, decreased productivity and short-term disability, because let's face it, being overweight can be a lot more complicated than we think. So we are looking at an estimated indirect cost of obesity in America costing roughly $500 billion a year. That's $500 billion. Imagine that. And at the rate this is going, 42% of Americans are projected to be obese by 2030. Those numbers are enough to have an African country go stark raving mad.
Application in medicine. Obesity, a global health problem, is increasing in many countries and likewise the growth in dietary energy supply, according to a study published today in the Bulletin of the World Health Organization.
The statistics are quite sensational, yes. It's a tripling of the number of people who are considered overweight and obese in the developing world since 1980. That takes the numbers to more than 900 million, and that's more than the number of overweight and obese people that we have in the high-income countries, which is probably around 570 million, something like that. So it's a very rapidly emerging problem, and it's now of a very large size. Well, it's associated with incomes and urbanizations and more sedentary lifestyles. So it's those emerging countries which have done the best in raising their incomes. It's the middle income countries, it's the Chinas, it's the Mexicos, which are the countries which are seeing the highest rates of overweight and obesity at the moment. Taking in a lot more calories in energy-dense foods compared to traditional staples where you're eating, say, maize and beans, where you get a full stomach fairly early, as opposed to eating, cooked pastries with lots of lovely fat and sugar in it and so on.
Pros and cons. The obesity disease because it meets the definition of disease. It decreases life expectancy and impairs the normal functioning of the body, and it can be caused by genetic factors. The obesity is not a disease because it is a preventive risk factor for other diseases. It is the result of eating too much and is caused by exercising too lightly.
Britain is too fat and is getting fatter, and doing nothing is not an option. More than 200,000 doctors have backed a report tonight calling for urgent action to combat obesity, including that tax on fizzy drinks and restrictions on television advertising for high-calorie foods. But the head of Britain's Obesity Forum has gone even further. Professor David Haslam has told this programme that obese children should be offered weight loss surgery, although current guidelines rule it out for anyone under 16. He says radical measures are needed if we are to start saving lives. Our science correspondent, Asha Tanna, has this report.
Sugary drinks in particular, we know that sugar ingested in liquid form is particularly harmful, especially to children. It's not only toxic to the liver, but it increases the risk of type 2 diabetes. But also we know that sugar in excess also interferes with the hormone in the brain that makes us feel full, so it also has appetite-driving qualities. And that's one of the good concerns.
A gastric bypass operation surgically shrinks the stomach. The stomach is divided into a pouch the size of a golf ball. It can hold up to 4 to 5 mouthfuls of food, while the rest of the stomach is left intact and sewn up. The pouch is then connected directly to the small intestine, which has been shortened, bypassing the rest of the stomach and the bowel.
Issue applied in Ecuador. The study is important because it provides evidence that the government has to implement policies that strike a healthy supply of food, and in turn reduce obesity, a risk factor of many health problems like diabetes, heart problems, strokes, and stomach cancers. The 194 how member states agreed global plan of an action for the prevention and control of non-communicable disease at the World Health Assembly in May 2013.
Okay, let's talk about something heavy. Us. The percentage of North Americans overweight or obese is now just under 40%. But more disturbingly is that 25% of North American children fall into the same category. So, what happened? I mean, have you ever been to a vintage clothing store? The waistlines are tiny. We didn't used to be like this. So, we, in between sips of high-calorie booster juice, while giving our kids a sugar-filled granola bar instead of an apple, start to ask, how did this happen? And more importantly, who's to blame? In the last decade, there have been a couple of factors suggested to blame for the rise of our collective weights. Lack of exercise in young children, the amount of sugar in our foods, unhealthy school lunch programs, an embarrassing lack of knowledge when it comes to simple nutrition. And these are all excellent reasons. But if we have all the culprits logically laid out before us, then why is our relationship with food still like a scene out of Brokeback Mountain?
I wish I knew how to quit you.
Maybe it's because that example isn't actually too far off. Maybe it's because over the years we have developed a relationship with food, a loving, emotional connection where we feel better with every high-calorie bite. A relationship that couldn't ever be wrong because we were introduced by the only other great love in our life. Television. And food advertisements towards kids have got to be the most manipulative thing ever. They target their soft, squishy, impressionable minds of a human being who only wants to know what's cool, what they can do to fit in, and how can they get more friends. And they tell them exactly how to do it, with food.
Conclusion. The body mass index is a useful epidemiologic tool that approximately bury a deposit for large a group of people, but clinicians may need to convene with WC in the office setting in order to more accurately identify patients at risk for CVD. Current health initiatives to address obesity need to develop and promoted. Based on previous experience with the smoking epidemic, allowing the food industry to control the rate and direction of such measures will result in inadequate or suboptimal programs.
Obesity costs this country about $150 billion a year, or almost 10% of the national medical budget. Approximately 1 in 3 adults and 1 in 6 children are obese. Obesity is epidemic in the United States and a major cause of death attributable to heart disease, cancer, and diabetes.
CDC TV presents Health Matters.
At its simplest, obesity results from people consuming more calories than their bodies burn. But it's a more complex problem than that. People didn't decide to become overweight. Their weight gain is a consequence of complicated changes in the environment, where food is more readily available and opportunities for physical activity are lacking.